Eden is about three groups that head onto this island to look to colonize and find new peace within their lives as they seek to meaning in life, but that all leads into quarrels that are unexpected and have a devastating outcome. Hello and welcome to Cinema, where we focus on a film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of Eden. Was it good, was it bad, or somewhere right in the middle? Or if you're waiting for this review to decide if you're going to see this movie or not, and taking it right in a positive, Eden is presented in a fashionable way, distinguished by Ron Howard as the director, that leads on with great presentation of the scenery. While it isn't necessarily changing throughout, it's a year-long film that's based on a true story about these travelers that going about one seeking for peace with his wife, one family of three that are trying to establish a place away from home, and this other entitled lady that's also bringing her lovers along, trying to establish this hotel settlement within the scope of where this island is headed. And there's different quarrels, different things that come about along the way that drives the interest, that drives the intrigue within the differences between these people that are more established, to setting up camp, to being able to farm and do all their own thing without doing any canned foods, and others that are kind of just opposite. This other woman that sort of has to live off of canned foods, she doesn't do that, and the doctor has his own way of writing this book, which the book writing scene is some of the more compelling things. Now, I personally have a little bit of bias being somewhat of a writer myself, but the way you're following along with this story as a whole creates some different dynamics throughout, having little bits of survival tactics along the way, while not being burrowed beneath all these things that makes it feel like it's a film that isn't focused on telling the story that it's trying to be. Now, this was written by certain accounts of this, so you know there's some aspects are biased along the way, but it still creates a presentable film that has that points of intrigue based on those ideas, and it's fashionable because of the way you distinguish Ron Howard's directing. This is a darker tone to what he's sort of done before, and I'm a fan of some of the craft that you get out of that. And not only that, I'm a fan of the cast, what we get out of Daniel Bruhl and his chemistry between that and Sydney Sweeney, what we get out of Jude Law and Vanessa Kirby together as husband and wife, and there's also Ana de Armas, who's the woman that leads on the entitled, self-serving other things that are coming about along the way, that really builds on a great ensemble cast to what you're all asking for this film as a whole. Which takes me right into the mix elements. There's things here and there where it may feel too long for some people. I don't personally feel like it's wasting too much time, but the gravitational pull to some of the scenes could be a hit or miss just by the overall atmosphere. It's not a thrilling film by the means of constantly building on the action, constantly going about different means of survival, but it does have those underlying means while also being based on the matters at hand, because this is prolonged to a year-long timeline, but it's, of course, having to separate all 4 seasons into their own chunks of what's all going on, being written by what was one of the survivals of this story. So it's not necessarily always going to be the short, week-long survival journey. It's stretched to a year long, where you have all these main points that this film is highlighting along the way based on the accounts that were written. And so you're not necessarily pulled into this as a survival, feeling stranded on this island, and that may isolate some people from enjoying the film for what it's trying to attempt. And therefore, there's some of the backgrounds, the backstory, the motivational means between all the characters are not going to be shown on screen because of how this is presented by the accounts of what we can do and rewritten in order to be dramatized as a movie for what the sake of this film is trying to attempt to show. And while there obviously would have been some form of this actually taking place, there are some scenes that have to be inserted, that have to be explained in a whole new way visually because of the way that it would have been written. Can't always be filled in to the fullest extent, can't always be presented with accurate means to where you're taking the heading of this story. All these different accounts that are being presented throughout the whole scope of what may have been taking place throughout all these quarrels that are going on of these three different groups that are happening. Which takes me into the negatives. There's a front to this film that is unfortunately underlined with a basis that it has a strong bias of being partially inaccurate because it's based on the writings of one particular person that, with the quarrels in mind, there's arguments, there's bad reps for what they thought of the other people, so there is going to be a strong bias toward making everything a little bit more enhanced in one sense toward the lady that felt entitled. That, yes, some of that could have been presented in the way within real life, but this, of course, could have dramatized it. It could have been feeling like it was better within a documentary style. But of course, while there is a filmmaking scene that filmmakers came to that island at one point within this actual story, it's not shown. While the credits show some of what the filmmakers caught on camera for these settlers that are colonizing on this island, what it ultimately takes out of that is not the truest picture of what may have been going on. So there's contrivances or things here and there that may not be 100% accurate, and leading on to that, it may not be fully painting the picture that you know you're getting from who these characters exactly was. But even taking it as its own film, there may be pieces here and there that you may be lacking because it's not a documentary, so you're not getting the inside knowledge, you're not getting the different varying views, and other side characters are not flourished up in enough manner to where you can fully coincide with understanding who they are, where they're seeking to go. And there's parts of where this woman is trying to establish a hotel on the island that we hardly ever see anything that's going out behind the scenes, whether it was mishandled within the recordings that they weren't building the hotel, or she actually was a bad business manager and didn't get anything started on the island based on the history that was all going on. So there's so many different things, little things like that, that they don't necessarily paint the whole picture to full account to the end result and resolvement of different things that are going along the way, where otherwise this is a character-focused story that grounds itself well enough to give a distribution of screen time, but not always fully accounting to who these characters were by the end. So that's just my personal review of Eden, which I have to rate a simply 6.5 out of 10. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of Eden. Was it good, was it bad, or somewhere right in the middle? And if you're now going to see the film or not, based on what my personal review suggests, make sure to like this video if you enjoy it, subscribe if you haven't already to join in film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. So that's just all, and make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.